And now I'd just like to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Mark Gross, the president of Data Conversion Laboratory. Mark, do you want to go get started?
Yes, and there's my picture and everything. Okay, thank you very much. And it's wonderful to be here on with this webinar with PTC. Thank you very much. Just, I guess, a few words on DCL for those of you who don't know us. Data Conversion Laboratory. We convert data. That's I guess our first and middle name, and that's what we've been doing for 40 years. Actually, going into our 41st year soon. And our business originally was to convert information and data and documents from almost anything. So Word, PDF, frame, data, all those other kinds of things that are out there. But of course, along with data comes a lot of other things that people don't think about that much. We do a lot of semantic enrichment of content, adding information onto what's already there, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all the latest technologies, especially when you're dealing with large amounts of content. You need to use as much automation technology as you can, and that's been the way we operate. A lot of entity extraction, which is becoming more important now as people are building larger data sets, data mining, all kinds of custom algorithms that will find information inside information. Becoming also more important is data harvesting and finding information on the web. A lot of content, a lot of data is sitting on the web these days, especially with regulatory content, all kinds of public information. We've developed technology that lets us find things on the web, to harvest things off the web. Also very important, as you're dealing with large and large amounts of data, it's hard to proofread and hard to check it all. So we've built a lot of software to do validation of information, to do QA, to check results, check what's out there. We do a lot of work actually with checking information was collected by other people, not just us. Content reuse, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's becoming more and more, as people build larger collections, there's a lot of redundancy, and it's important, especially when you're converting information, or even just to check up on what you have, to find all that redundant content and remove it. We have tools that help do that. Structured content delivery and delivering things just the way you need it. A lot of data streaming and information delivered all over the world. And training sets are the byword to artificial intelligence. You don't have anything until you've got data. We've developed quite a practice in building training sets that are used for training algorithms throughout, both things that we do, but things that other people are doing. And of course, content analysis and just checking up content, and specifically content clarity, we'll talk about a little bit later. So the topic is data digital transformation. That's the byword today. It was a recent survey, 2017. Gartner said that reported 42% of CEOs have embarked on a digital business transaction. The reality is it's a lot more now, because things have happened in the world that really compressed a lot of that. COVID and people working at home and people reduced workforces and having to do a lot more with less have made it more and more important to be able to deal with whatever work is out there, and specifically data work. It needs to. It's become more and more important to have automation, to have your data, to have it structured. And those companies that actually in 2017 had made their start on it found that when COVID hit and they suddenly had to start working from home, they were in a much better position than others who hadn't done that. So, and digital transformation involves a lot of money, thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of dollars for many companies in purchasing new tools and technology, with the hope and the intent is that it'll have all these benefits, increased sales because they're able to display their wares more easily, and people are able to find information more easily, and people buy by looking information up on the web a lot of times, or getting personalized information to them, better customer experiences, and all of you have experienced the web chats out there that are either very good or really terrible. Personalization information and getting information just the way you want it, or just the way you're expected to want it, and that's of course also a good and bad. If it's really personalized and things that you want, it's terrific. If it's just getting ads over and over again on things you just looked up 10 minutes ago or 3 days ago, it's annoying and terrible. So there's a flip side to everything, but in general, it's improved service that we're trying to do. And I think in many cases, we've already all experienced that some organizations are able to provide much better service because of this digital transformation. So part of this, of course, is not part of the, and a critical part of that is content transformation. No matter what new tools you bring in there and systems and the budgets you throw in it, data is critical. And many times we often say you have nothing until you have good data. Another survey, bad data is the leading cause of failure for IT projects. It actually comes out of a study that's referenced below, talking about the $600 billion is the cost of poor data quality. I think it's really a lot more, especially since $6 billion doesn't sound like so much after we're talking about trillion-dollar kinds of spendings. But poor data is a leading cause of IT project failures, and the leading cause of just the difficulties of being able to get together and build build good systems. And a big piece of it is just being able to take the data that you already have and be able to work with it. The keys to a lot of these transformative benefits lie in well-structured and well-tagged content components, content data. We all have information. We know what it's like, and many of you have gotten past this point already, but if you're trying to put together a marketing piece or a proposal, or trying to put together a specification document or anything else like that, very often you're dependent on material you've already have done already. Sometimes you feel like I've written this 100 times already. How come I have to write it again? And the key to be able to the key to all this, to be able to make better use of information you already have and information that's coming into your system all the time, is to be able to be able to find it, to be able to structure it in a way that you can find the pieces of it, and to be able to find it, to be able to pull it back together rather than having to rewrite everything. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 steps to getting to that point. One is when you convert lots of data, there's a step of pre-conversion to do a content analysis. I think it's a very important step, and we'll see a little more about that. I think there's a step to find all your redundant content. As a step to understand what your information model is, which is a fancy way of saying to know how all your information fits together, so that you'll be able to find it easily and economically. So I'm going to use, I'm just going to introduce this concept of architecture of information with DITA. DITA is one architecture of how you handle information. So that means taking all the information you've got over here and putting it and tagging it in a way so that you know what it is. DITA stands for, thank you for putting this on here, Darwin Information Typing Architecture. It is an architecture originally put together by IBM in the late 1990s. By 2004, they donated it to OASIS. It became a public standard, which meant it was able to be used everywhere for certain kinds of information. It's ideally suited for information that has lots of components that you want to put together in different ways. Very important in technical information, maintenance information, educational kind of information. There are other architectures that are being used for other things. For scientific articles and books, there's a standard called the JAT standard. For aviation and military use, is a standard called the S1000D standard. All of these are different ways of pulling information together. In the pharmaceutical industry, something called SPL for product labeling and all that information that you get in those, when you get a prescription drug, you get those long McGillas that come along with it. That's put together in SPL, which is a standard way of doing that. So I'll just focus a little bit on DITA and we'll move on because the other things are really work in other places. I didn't know till recently why it was called Darwin. Darwin, of course, is the author of the concept of inheritance and species inheritance. And one of the features of DITA and other of these specializations is the ability that once you define something at a high level, you can build lower levels below it, and they inherit the properties of the top. I'm not going to go into any of that in any detail. I just thought that was interesting. It's a way of typing information so you know that this particular item is a topic, this particular item is a list, this particular item is a list of tools, things like that, so that that you're not just, when you do a Google search, you find lots of extraneous information because you haven't typed the information in any particular way. But if you've identified your information to say that this is a tool or that this is a step in a process, then you could say things like, do a search only on these particular kind of items. And all of this is really a benefit that once you've pulled together, it's better. You can build better documents. You can use the documents in better ways because they're better typed, and you can reuse elements and lots of other benefits like that. Let me talk about. So moving on, we've talked about architecture and about the DITA is one used, I think, in many of the people in this audience are probably. This is probably one that's looked at, and then there's others besides that. I think it's a blessing that there are these almost out-of-the-box kind of architectures available today, because it makes it very easy to get started and to find tools to work with them. And back in 2000 or 2005, if you wanted to use XML, you had to build your own structure, your own architecture, which had startup fees of like $20,000 and $30,000. So it was a bit of a hump to get started. So it's great to have something that you can start with. So let's talk a little bit about pre-conversion analysis. Okay, so one of the things that I think is very important to do is to inventory your content. And the reason for that is because most people don't really know what they have, and what they have is in good shape, and what's obsolete. And what is redundant, and what you don't really need anymore. Very often we start with a conversion discussion. It's like, well, I've got 18 terabytes of content. Well, how much of it do you really need? I need all of it. But there is a cost to moving content over. Just like when you move houses across the country, there's a cost to moving everything with you. You try to cull out the things you don't need anymore, the things that are not valuable anymore. Likewise, going through your materials, inventorying is very important. Identifying variables and redundancy, I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next step. Think about what kind of information you have over there. Is it information on maintenance information and what's involved in that? Is it mostly marketing information and what's involved in that? Are there crossovers between your marketing information and your technical information? That's all part of that content analysis that should be done up front. And also, it's important to know the special characteristics about your content. Is it mostly textual material? Is there a lot of tables in there? Math, equations, all kinds of things like that, just to know what you're going to have to make sure you're supporting as you go further. And don't make assumptions, really, because I think most, until you really look at it, you probably don't know what you have back there. Many times we talk about, well, let's not convert anything because we're going to have to rewrite it anyway. I would say don't devalue your legacy content, because some of it is very valuable. It's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of material that's been worked on. And rewriting is a tremendous undertaking. It's very easy to underestimate that's what's going to do, to rewrite stuff, to vet it, to go through legal review, to go all those kinds, to marketing review. Don't ignore the metadata. We sort of haven't introduced it. Metadata is the data about the data, about what your content. So, information like when it was written, who wrote it, what is the title of that particular section. Very frequently, if things get moved over, a lot of that information can get lost. And I think, I'm a big proponent, of course, of automation. Don't underestimate the manual processes that are involved. This is not something that people do in their spare time. It's usually a major undertaking. And also don't underestimate the cost of managing this kind of project. So if building the systems and processes to make sure that you've handled everything, there is a cost to that. I just wanted to show you a tool that we use for some of our upfront analysis, and there are other tools like this, but this is a tool that we use that will go through a large collection of information and come back. This is just the headshot over here of where it's finding how many items you have and how big it is and how many pages there are and all kinds of other information about the collection of information. Is behind this, there's detailed information that tells you about how many things that are referenced in the collection are not found, and what they are, how many links to images, how much validation problems there are, and identifies where there are. It sort of gives you an inventory of what should be looked at before you ever undertake a conversion, because many times fixing those things up front is the easiest way to make sure that you've got what you need, and that the rest of the steps are going to be much easier. Talking about content redundancy, and I've mentioned it a few times, very many times, and you've got a lot of information that's just redundant across your collection, because as you go, you cut and paste and you pull things together, and your proposals have a lot of information that really crosses across. Your market information has information that crosses. Your technical information does. I mean, we've done collections like in extreme collections where you've got like 20 models of the same kind of product, and you've got manuals for each one of them, you might find that 80, even 90% of the content is redundant, which means you're editing it. Every time you update something, you're editing multiple times. Every time you translate it, you're translating multiple times, all kinds of things like that. We find that we think it's very important to try to eliminate that redundant content up front, so that you have to later on when you're doing a conversion, you have a lot less to convert. Right? Sometimes it's half the material, which reduces the total budget just by being able to do this. It's also, there's a lot of nearly redundant material out there, which means somebody took a paragraph and put in a semicolon, or put in a colon, or put in a comma, or changed one word. And it's really redundant content, but it's a little bit different, and that's a little harder to find. So that's a piece, and the don't of this is an easy one. Just don't forego this step. I think it's very important for many people. This is sort of we have a product called Harmonizer, which actually does that kind of analysis. It'll go through a large collection of information, put in 50,000 or 100,000 pages. It'll come back and tell you what percentage of it is found identically in other places, what is nearly identical, and some parameters around that, and what parts are actually unique. It comes across, probably should have made this larger, I apologize. But it'll come back with reports that show you all the paragraphs that are identical to each other, and where they are found in your document set. So that you can go back, and you have a checklist over here, things that you may want to correct early on or change early on, so that all these redundancies can pop out of the system as a next step. And this report, which you can't see, but I think the slides will be made available so you can look at them more carefully, or we can surely provide more information. This shows you that there are certain items that are nearly identical to each other. So that first, we call the match group, will show you that there are the top over here shows you the composite paragraph and all the things that are near to each other, that if you change them, you would have those are all matched together. And then shows each of the variations. It's a little hard to see, but it says if you are a non-computerist, which is a word that's used in some parts of the world, but if you're not a computer user is another way of doing it. There are different ways of looking at that same information. You can see exactly what it is, and you can make a decision on whether you want to maintain separate collections over here, or you want to make them all the same. Sometimes you find errors over here that may have existed in a document set forever, right? So we once did an analysis on a set of engine manuals for airplanes, and there were similar models across the collection. And in 19 out of 20 cases, it was turned this clockwise, and in one of them, it was counterclockwise, which was obviously an error and had been in the collection for 20 years. So that's a sort of a side thing that happens when you clean up your materials. It also, this kind of analysis lets you find the things that are really variables in your content. So it might be the same paragraph, but has a different model number in it. You would find that in this kind of analysis, so that when you design your system, you can, if you're in DITA, or if you're in S1000D, or in many other architectures, you can have variables there. So you can have the same paragraph, but just change that one word or that one title. And this is a way to find all those opportunities. All these are opportunities, are tools that let you simplify your collection, so that instead of handling 100,000 pages, maybe you're handling 50,000 pages or 30,000 pages. So I just want to talk a little bit about information models. When you're doing information models are really telling you how your information is structured together. So, for example, in a technical manual, you might have steps in a procedure, and the steps go together and in a certain order. That's an information model. Of course, it gets much more complicated because there are lots of other things in there, but it's basically how you think of documents and how they come together so that when you pull together a document, they'll all come together correctly. So going back to DITA for a minute, it lets you one of the things you're using it for, the reason you're using it for is that you're able to take reusable chunks of data that you're going to combine together and use over and over again in different places. So if you have a warning, maybe you've got the same phrasing for a warning that you can pull in many different places. How do you know how to pull those things in? So there's a I would call it a table of contents that pulls everything together and pulling in all those. It's called different things in different collections and different architectures, but how do you pull things together is part of that information model. There's the metadata that you want to collect. That's part of your data model. What is the metadata? What kind of structure it is? Where does it fit into the collection? Who wrote it? When was it vetted? When was it revised? It's all information about that. If it's not the content itself, it's information about the content. And depending on what you're doing, you may have more or less of that kind of information involved over here. If you're collecting, if you're doing scientific articles, which is a whole different, right, and using the JAWS structure, well, your metadata might be different. Your metadata there might be who's the author, who was it, what affiliation does that author have? It might be all the images that you have in there, and what kind of licensing is involved on that particular image. When can you use it? So there's a lot of information that's collected about it, which is important. Different industries, different collections have different information that's needed. So it's very important to, when you're pulling this together, is to get feedback from your user community about what is an information model. There's internal and external use of your content. So how are you going to be handling things inside the internal processes for authoring, for collecting it, for pulling it together, and then how are people outside going to be using it? Some of that metadata might be saying this is available only inside the company, is not available outside the company. This is only licensed for this particular use, not outside use. And it's important to have this information model before you choose the tools that you're going to be pulling in, to make sure that the tools you're pulling in will be able to handle your specific needs, or you can make decisions about those specific needs are not so needed. So it goes both ways. Don't forget about author input. They know your information better than anybody else. They can inform the workflow. They can inform the metadata. They can answer those questions that you don't have to research. And again, don't overlook your legacy content. So, I think I may have said some of this already. This is a nice target picture of what's in there, how to think about what's out there. And again, the content unit is the content itself. And that's the center. That's what people usually think about. The information types are what you're going to be using to start. What kind of information is it? Is it internal information, internal, is it technical, is it descriptive, can you use it in marketing, all those kind of things. And then surrounding that is information on reusability, where, and once you start using reusable content, authors will need to think about that when they're authoring. They won't say look at the image below. They will say look at the image in something that can be found elsewhere. And much of your content is already like that when you do the reuse analysis. Other things will need to be fixed, and that part's part of what can be defined over there. And then the linking and how it comes together. What images belong with which piece of content, and what tables belong with which kind of content. What tables that might have been in the back of a book someplace should really fit together with the content now. And the mapping is what I was calling the table of contents. How does this information all map together? And that's in a nutshell. A target is an information model. I'm getting to too much of the technical details, and I know I was simplified. I always get accused of oversimplifying, but I think this is a pretty good picture of what it is. And I just want to finish with, don't underestimate, again, we talked a little bit before about, don't underestimate how much manual work is involved in all this. And I said before, I'm a big proponent of automation where you possibly can. And this is a workflow for a particular workflow to reuse internally, but I think it's fairly typical of what we might be doing, and segregating what can be automated and what cannot be automated. So there is a piece up front that really, I think, needs to be human, how content is delivered to us and what we do with it. There's quite a bit of vetting and prioritizing of the materials that are coming in and making sure they're correct at the beginning. We have many ongoing clients where this is also an automated step because we've set it up so that it'll be ongoing streams of information. I mean, we talk about ourselves as content data conversion laboratory, but really more than half our work, probably about 70% of our work is really ongoing material that's coming in from all over the world and that's converted automatically. That probably would be fed in, it would be a stream coming automatically. But this is talking about, a conversion of your legacy content. How would that happen? There's a ingestion point, which is an automated process to take it in and log it in and pull it together and all those things you might do manually. But if you do it manually, it's labor intensive, leads to a lot of errors. It's just the source conversion is automated. There's a lot of automated cleanup utilities that we put in over there to make sure things are up front. And then usually it goes to a manual step. And this really, if you look at this is the only manual process in this, which is once it's come out of the automated steps, there's a vetting process to make sure everything looks okay. And there's some things that computers can't figure out because, I can always say, never underestimate the creativity of the content authors when they were trying to put things together and get it to fit in a certain way or work in a certain way. So some things are not going to have worked correctly, and that's a step that usually humans have to do. And then following that, there's an automated quality control, because it's checking for the things that are just is everything tagged together? Is everything linked together? Is all those kind of things? And at that point, conversion to XML and validation would be an automated step. It gets converted to a specific format that a client is going to be needing, and off it goes. Just the point of this is there are a lot of the steps, if you segregate them, can be automated. There are some steps that are going to be manual. It's different in every case, or every kind of material, but the focus is on getting 70–80% of it to be done in an automated manner. Moving to digital transformation, I just want to, it's not just a chore. It is a chore. It's a lot of work involved a lot of times, but it's also an opportunity to improve the quality of the content that you do have and make some decisions on what you need and what you don't need. It's an opportunity to reduce all that duplicated content, which will pay dividends as you go, in the future, since you need to maintain less, you need to vet less, legal review less, translate less, and also you have better control of what's there so that you know exactly where everything is. And one thing about organized data and getting content in such a way, it's going to prepare you for the next data evolution. I don't for a minute think that this is the last time that data will need to be looked at, and there'll be new technologies that will do different things. But setting it up this way will prepare you so that if you need to make changes later on or evolve later on, it'll be much, much easier. And meanwhile, you get all the benefits of your new improved data collection. And thank you very much. If